Yeah, good morning to all you viewers online, those of you watching on Facebook and those watching on YouTube, as well as those in our Zoom meeting room. Thank you for joining us. This is a conversation that we should have had last week, but because of other commitments, we have moved it forward to today. And the conversation is on Sir Julius Chan, the veteran, and he's still around, still in politics, still actively participating in PNG politics. And to add value to the discussion, we have our own political commentator, history expert, and our former Foreign Service officer, Mr. Lawi Yako, with us to talk about Sir Julius Chan and his contribution to PNG's foreign policy. Mr. Ako, good morning to you.
Morning, Mr. Aguirre, and morning, everyone.
Mr. Ako, could you tell us a bit more about Sir Julius Chan? Who is Sir Julius Chan? To begin the discussion.
I've just put some pointers on a slide, so I'll just share it so we can continue on with this.
Yes, please, that will be good.
Yes, so as we can see, Sir Julius Chan, the veteran, just lessons from the PNG's foreign policy journey. And to answer your first question, I just thought I'd put some pointers down there, so we can all see them. Well, he's as you all know, for those who don't know, listening from outside of Papua New Guinea, Sir Julius Chan is the current governor of the New Island province. He was born on the 29th of August, 1939, the fifth of 7 children born to his father Chen Park and mom Miriam Tinkoris of New Island. He became active in politics in the 1960s. In the 1960s, and he first got elected to the House of Assembly in 1968 and then was re-elected in 72, 77, 82, and 92. This is according to the Wikipedia. He became the leader of the People's Progress Party in 1970 and was knighted as a Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire in 1981 and appointed to the Privy Council in 1992. So that's Sir Julius. In answer of your first question, and he has had a very, very colorful career from the moment he entered politics right up to now, and he's still actively participating in Papua New Guinea politics, and he's considered the elder statesman now. We can see from the last 12 months of the politics that has been happening in Parliament, we've seen both sides of the House listening to him talk and listening to the wisdom he has to empower over his 30 years of political experience, or 50 in this country. He became second prime minister. Sorry, he became the second prime minister of Papua New Guinea on 11th March 1980, succeeding Sir Michael Somare. And it was during his time. I look at Sir Julius Chan's career as having three pinnacles. One would be his role as prime minister during the foreign policy review. of the friends to all, enemies to none, that eventually came out as the new foreign policy of active but selective engagement. And then three things, like I said, the foreign policy review, Papua New Guinea's military action in Vanuatu, and also the Sen line. Those are the things I remember. I personally put Sir Julius Chan's contribution to PNG politics and PNG history on. There were other contributions he did in his time as governor or as the prime minister, but these three to me stand out as the main pinnacles of his political career. Mr. Aguirre, I think this leads me on to the second question.
Yes. The second question is basically us trying to get your views as a military historian. What do you think about his involvement in the Coconut War, the Vanuatu conflict, and the Sen Line crisis in 1997?
Okay, thanks for that. Chen and Vanuatu. See, the 1980 Kumul Force expedition to Vanuatu preceded the foreign policy review. So by the time the parliament had endorsed the new foreign policy of active and selective engagement, the PNGDF or the PNG government had provided assistance to Vanuatu in 1980 for them to set up their government, and that had been done already. And it showed it was a show in the region that Papua New Guinea's participation in regional affairs had now come of age. And it also enabled military cooperation among the Melanesian countries. This is important. The military cooperation is important because I remember from the decade 1980 to 1990, there were Vanuatu paramilitary force members being trained to become officers at Igam Barracks. During some of the graduations when I was a kid growing up there, we would see that one or two officers graduating as after their time at the military academy. So that was part of it. But I also think that on the other end of the scale, it made Australia and New Zealand sit up and notice that the PNGDF was indeed a regional player now from the 1980 Kumul Force expedition, and that came under Prime Minister Chan's watch. Now, going back to the foreign policy, see, Sir Julius Chan got ousted by Sir Michael in 1982, but the good thing that happened, and because they when we look back at the quality of those leaders, we realized that they knew that the foreign policy was important to all of them, which was why Sir Michael never did any changes to it, but he allowed it to go on and be endorsed. Okay. Now, the formation of the MSG happened straight after the Vanuatu crisis. Excuse me. That's another story in itself, but I think it was formed up during a meeting up in Goroka between three of the PNG, three of the Melanesian leaders, top bureaucrats, Bill Dim, and also Nico Barawu from Vanuatu, and another gentleman from the Solomon Islands. Okay. So when we look at that, the Vanuatu action, it provided a platform for the PNGDF to build on from that experience. But sadly, from the 1980 onwards, politics would not allow that to happen because military history says that the moment after General Gago Mamai became the new commander, the second commander of the PNGDF, political interference started slowly coming in. I think the Vanuatu Parliament's endorsement of Vanuatu made politicians sit up to know that they could influence regional elections, and that added on to the PNGDF's operations we have right up to now. Okay. Now on Chen and Senline, his book on playing the game, the development policy blog, in its review says that it was the climax of his political career. And I think when we look back to to 1997 and 1998, it is true. There's a sense of truth in it. You know, that was one of the pinnacles, which is why I am saying that those three things were part of his pinnacles: Senline, Vanuatu, and the Foreign Policy Review. And his idea of in his book, the reason why he moved towards his government's moved towards signing the contracts with those mercenary companies was his desire to bring an end to the bring an end to the crisis, or move it to a peace negotiation situation. And now all this had to be done before the July 1997 election. So you can see a part of his political survival hinged on solving the Bougainville issue. The review of FERA says also that Chen saw the Senline contractors as bringing peace on Bougainville through psychological warfare and through massive release of information to the people on the ground, which means leaflets and information papers and stuff down to the people so that they know that they had to get out quickly because what was coming would be destructive. And also the firepower of what we can term the generalized as the PNGDF, because they came under the PNG government. So the mercenaries who went in would go under the purview of the PNGDF, not under his influence, but under the flag. So he was thinking that he thought that would force the separatist movement into submission. The review also further states that his use of the black mercenaries, he thought they would be more acceptable in Papua New Guinea on Bougainville than white mercenaries. So it gives his book gives a lot of arguments, and people have said that it's a one-sided write-up, and by right it is his thoughts. You know, if you write a biography, then those are your thoughts you're putting. You're not writing a lecture where you have to look at all angles. You know, it's your book, and you write it from how you saw it. And for what it for whatever reason people will have on the ideas on the book, it is a book written on Senline from one angle, and we have General Singerok's book written on Senline from another angle. So it gives us Papua New Guineans a balanced view of what really went on. You know, what was in the thoughts of those people when they were doing it. So you look at playing the game coming from a very strategic, high level point of view, and then you look at a matter of conscience, General Singerok's book coming from a more tactical operational point of view. And both their views have to be appreciated by the readers. Okay, Mr. Egger, we'll go on to the next question.
Yes, we can move on to the next question. The next question is basically asking about your opinion. What do you think about his leadership style? How would you classify his leadership style? Is it a style that is influencing the next generation of leaders to follow what he has done and use his methods and way of doing things. So, what is your view on that, on his leadership style?
Mm. The good thing with the books that have been written on people's experience can also tell us, the readers, what type of characters these people had and their leadership qualities. And I just I thought I'd pick out two of Sir Julius Chan's leadership style, just on charismatic and transformational, and then on contingency and situational type of leadership. We all know what a charismatic leader, a person is. It's a quality in a person that makes others want to follow him or her. Or again, it's the belief of the constituents must be similar to those of the leader, and the unquestionably acceptance of and affection for the leader must exist. This is from Dubin, Douglas, and Miller, 2003. And this can, and I view this from the angle that he's still the governor. Ever since he entered politics in the 1960s, and the short breaks he had while others get into the race, he has to be charismatic and transformational in order to get votes all the time, to be brought into parliament. Now, contingency and situational leadership, I bring that also to the foreign policy review, which influenced his leadership on the bigger picture to make it happen. See, the foreign policy review happened under Semicolon. The review started in 1979 under Semicolon. After a vote of no confidence, Sir Julius became prime minister. He continued the foreign policy review. And then Sir Michael came in later in 1982 and endorsed it. And there was no change because both these leaders, according to my personal view, saw that was the big picture that has to be, regardless of their personal interest or personal politics, it was the big picture for the country that must be maintained. So despite the government changes that continue, and that was attributing to the contingency or situational aspect of their leadership rights. And it also talks about the Fiedler's contingency theory, also in the 2003 book by the three writers, that the more control exercised by the leader, the more favorable the situation is for him or her. And we can see how he has continued to be elected by the people of New Ireland because he has qualities in him that makes people follow him and to be elected. I just want to go back to his prime minister thing. And then when we look at the last bullet point, he also succeeded third prime minister Winty in 1994, and then in 1997, the Chen his government took on the contract to go ahead with the Sandline contract on the Bougainville crisis. So that also covers situational leadership. I'm not sure about charismatic in that situation because these were all leaders, and him being the prime minister would have convincing powers and arguments that would have made the deputy prime minister and the other members of cabinet go along with him to get the Sandline contract in place. So that has a sense of charisma in it. And also, again, it goes down to the situational leadership. The situation with the impending 1997 elections, all the politicians realized that their lifeline in politics depended on getting the Bougainville crisis resolved. And we all know that history tells us that that didn't happen. it continued on for some more years before the peace came in. But that's how I see Sir Julius Chan's leadership styles and quality, Mr. Aguirre. Maybe you could add on to this thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. I think your observation is a really good observation, and the students have taken note of what you have shared with them. I just have a follow-up question on related to the Sandline issue, and this is in regards to Australia's involvement. If you look at the book by Ginjal and Wesley, you'll see that Australia from day one was closely, especially they gave credit to the Australian intelligence community. They were watching once they had the news that the Sandline missionaries touched down in Wewak and went to Moyam to train our troops at Moyam barracks. There were planes flying, doing surveillance. There was an operative underground. If you read the book, that's what they said from information that was previously classified, but then declassified, and the information was used by both of them and shared in their book on making Australian foreign policy. So they said the intelligence community played a really effective role in getting information, getting uh, news on the ground, and then sending it down to Canberra, to Alexander Downer and John Howard, in order for them to make decisions to influence what PNG was doing. That was a really interesting bit of information that I found from the book written by Alan Kinzel and David Wesley. So, what are your point of views about Australia's involvement in the Sandline crisis, from your experience and from what you observed during the 1997 crisis?
By right, they should be involved because it covers regional security matters. And Australia's Australia has always maintained the fact. We can see it from examples, tons of examples. Australia has always maintained the fact that they want to see a prosperous Papua New Guinea, which is why the development cooperation plan has been set up, has been written. There's a development cooperation plan 2022, 2026, 27, I think, which was released this in the last fortnight, I think, and that covers all the assistance to Papua New Guinea, and they have always maintained that a prosperous Papua New Guinea will have a multiplier effects throughout the region. See, we have to appreciate the fact also that every time there is a crisis in Papua New Guinea, they are the first to respond, both on humanitarian grounds and also for their own national interest. And that goes without saying. Every country works on national interest, and if that national interest merges with the recipient's national interest, then it is seen as a goodwill. If it doesn't match, then that's it. So, and I can equate that to APEC 2018, the Leaders Summit, when maybe 6 or 12 months, or 6 months before the actual summit, there were already security agencies, security personnel from all the economies here in the country. You would have seen them strolling under the Erima Bridge. You would have seen these ladies, one or two of them, expert ladies, strolling by themselves under the Erima Bridge. Who in his right mind would go and stroll under the Erima Bridge? And so that's security at its best. And what these ladies were doing, or running down 2 Mile Hill, jogging down 2 Mile Hill, they were testing out the security. How do you say? They were just testing out the parameters of the security they would be covering. And all that ended as soon as the leaders' meeting ended, and everybody went, and all the you saw a stop in all the expats running around Papua New Guinea jogging or walk about, and that only goes to show the importance of security. And yes, of course, APEC 2018 security measures were taken because of their leaders here. But when you look at Bougainville, and when you look at Bougainville as a map that covers Papua New Guinea, Australia, and the Solomon Islands, then we can see the interest of the security involvement, security influence that has in the region. It would seem from my point of view that Australia does not have any problems with Papua New Guinea's bilateral relations with China or with any other country for that matter. Its issue arises out of PNG, most possibly in the future, having a foreign military base on its shores. That is the main issue. You will realize that when we look at the bilateral relations with China, there is no talk about economics by Australia, because they also have trade arrangements with China too. So they trade with China. So there is no problem with it. I think the main issue would be on having PNG having a foreign military base on its shores. But again, when we look at Manus and Lombrum, isn't that a foreign military base too? So that's something we all have to take into account. I think it breaks down into our Prime Minister Marape's two-prong. It's my own point of view. The current government has a two-prong foreign policy initiative. One is maintaining its traditional partners on trade, and on security, historical partners. So it's a difference between traditional partners for trade and historical partners for security. So I think those are my thoughts on your comments, Mr. Aguirre.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. My next question is related to the National Intelligence Organization. You said in one of your presentations that Sir Julius Chan was part of the process or involved in the process of setting up the National Intelligence Organization, or NIO. And if you look at the NIO Act, it's from 1984, and we're still yet to update the National Intelligence Organization Act. And it's outdated if you look at the Act. But that is beside the point. The question I'm asking is, could you elaborate further on his involvement in the setting up of the National Intelligence Organization during his tenure as the Prime Minister and after that?
According to Jonathan Rich's book on Sebia, Sir Julius set up that National Intelligence, the NIO, National Intelligence Organization, to provide first-hand assessments and briefing on security-related matters around Papua New Guinea. And this was, remember, this was in the 1980s where the OPM were very active. And also you had Sam Michael returning from China, and then Sohato across the border saying that Indonesia's security risk lied across the border from those two separatist movements, the Papua Besena and Bougainville. So based on these undertakings, I said Julius, I think he made the right move by setting up our National Intelligence Organization to cover and vet security issues, both domestic and international. It's been 40 years since the act has been amended, and I do hope that work is done on reviewing the act after the foreign policy review has been done. Now the next thing after the foreign policy now would be merging those other underlying pillars or let's say pillars to it. When you look at the foreign policy of developed countries, uh, all the other acts or all the other pillars or pathways are all merged into its foreign policy undertakings. So it's high time they do. I think they have a new NIO. They have a new acting director general or director general just recently appointed a couple of months ago, and I hope he can listen to this conversation we're having and start working on that.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. Like going back to what I said a few minutes ago, the case involving Australia and the Sandline crisis, and now Australian intelligence were really active on the ground and feeding their leaders information uh, at rapid speed or very good information, accurate information in real time, and they were able to make really good decisions in order to influence the outcome of the Sandline crisis. So with PNG now, from your experience in the public service, what do you think is the way forward? Should we increase funding to the National Intelligence Organization because they are pivotal to policy making, as shown in the example by Australia? Should we bring them into the limelight, get them more involved in decision making, especially foreign policy decision making? And do they have a foreign intelligence body or division within the NIO itself to play a very more influential or play a more influential role in foreign policy making?
I personally think the NIO should go through a massive restructure exercise to cover all those angles we've just talked about. And I also think that the Department of Defense, the Police Department, or the RPNGC, Department of Foreign Affairs, DJEG, and Prime Department should also have units, security-related units, if not supported, established to complement the NIO's thing. Because it is a risk having one organization responsible for that, because then the risks of being compromised are bigger. But if we had other similar units also existing, then they act as checks and balances. When we look at the bigger developed, yeah, I know we can't compare ourselves with the bigger developed economies and the intelligence service or security services, but they have different arms within those separate different. People say that it's costly, but those arms act as checks and balances on the other, and they can verify information. So the information provided by one organization to the Prime Minister's office, the PM's office can ask the other 3 or 4 organizations, can you verify this and true or guess fire work? So it's important that, firstly, I think there should be a massive restructure exercise. And then the issue of funding comes into play, because I think the NIO is part of the Prime Minister's department structure, although their answering lines are different, but it's part of that. So it becomes a question of funding now. But your opinion is, I share your opinion that there must be a massive restructure exercise, because all those intelligence security personnel who were in the country during the crisis came from different. I'm thinking they came from different arms of their government, so that they reported back to their bosses, and the bosses at their own levels sat down in a committee during the committee hearings and then meetings, and then they verified those. It is one of the reasons why you look at how retired General Stanley McChrystal, the U.S. General who commanded the operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, came up with this team of teams concept. He couldn't get real-time intel because there was so much infighting and silos and territorialism and all that. So he said, look, So he started this team of team concept. And when he set up the teams, the teams from the various security arms, they were still answerable to their bosses, to him. So from that version, he converted into the team of team concept, where anyone in the team is responsible for that particular sector. In that way, we don't need to talk to everyone along that chain. You only need one representative talking to that group. So you look at I look at the team of teams. A depiction of the team of teams would be that Olympics emblems, all those circles intertwining among. That's how a team of teams works. So then you have people talking to one another on a real time, and that's how I think that's how the security agencies around the world are talking. Yes, they have their bosses, they answer to their bosses, but at the operational and tactical level, I think that's how they operate. When they have committee meetings, they have only one person representing, and I brought that concept into the APEC 2018 teams also. So if it was on agriculture, we only had one person from the APEC secretary attending an agriculture meeting, and then he became part of the agriculture committee team. It was on trade, we had one person attending that, and they all came, and we in the APEC secretary, we had our own trade team that met on all those issues. So in that way, you could vet, and those teams extended internationally into the APEC working groups abroad. So any information we had from outside of the circle, we vetted inside. So that's how I think it should work, because it is very, very risky to have one organization covering all those things. Then that one organization becomes answerable to one leader, and a lot of inconveniences can come out from that. That's my take on that issue, Mr. Aguirre.
Thank you, Through Mustafa. Just a correction, the book that I made reference to, it's called Making Australian Foreign Policy, and it's written by the late Alan Ginzel and Michael Wesley. I said David Wesley. I was thinking about the former Kumul and Canberra Raiders player, David Wesley, and I accidentally said David Wesley instead of Michael Wesley. So it's Michael Wesley and Alan Ginzel. And it's a really interesting book if you people have
What's the title again? The title again,
Make-
Mr. Aguirre?
Making Australian Foreign Policy. If you are in a bookshop somewhere and you're looking for a book, this book is a good book for you to pick up and read. I was given a copy by Dr. Philip Mitner. Mitner sent me a hard copy, and I went through the book, and it's a really good book. All right, Mr. Ako, any final remarks in regards to our topic for discussion this morning?
No, but it has been a very interesting conversation for us this morning too, because I myself started to put some critical thinking behind those type of leadership traits, and what made them do those things. And it's open for debate from now until forever. When people will look back and see how things were done, and they can make up their own minds on how to plan forward.
Yeah, I was following the EPG, their movement from afar, and I saw on one occasion they went to New Island province. They went to New Island province, and I hope they went and saw Sir Julius Chan and had a chat with him about what happened during that period that we talked about previously, from 1979 to 1982, and how the first foreign policy white paper was formulated, and how things transpired and the processes involved, and then they drew from the experience back then and then used it to formulate our current foreign policy white paper. So I saw somewhere on social media that they were in New Island, so I said, oh, okay, maybe they went to visit Sir Julius Chan. I don't know whether or not they went, but I'm just assuming
They
that
would
they
have.
did.
They would have, because obviously they would have written a letter to the PA and governor's office telling them of their visit, and then interviews would have happened. So I'm assuming they would have.
Yeah. If they did not, then that would be a big foreign policy crime not to talk to the man who was there in the engine room when we had our first review and the first and only formulation of a foreign policy white paper for the country since independence. So I hope they talk to him, and then the knowledge and whatever information they gained from him was used to formulate our second foreign policy white paper.
And
which
it's a
will
good
be-
thing. It's a good thing that he's still around. So it was a
Yeah.
great opportunity to go and see him. The
Mhm.
next time we review the foreign policy, we won't have any old people around anymore to get advice from.
Cool. So hopefully they got really useful information to help them formulate the white paper and to chart our next course going forward or way going forward in the years to come. All right, so we'll stop here. We've shared a lot about Sir Julius Chan. If you have any questions for the viewers, I'm sure many of you, some of you have a very good working understanding of Sir Julius Chan. You've met him personally and you've sat down and talked with him, and you know his leadership philosophy, his style of doing or way of doing things. If you do, then please share with us on Facebook, share your comments on YouTube as well. Mr. Ako will be uploading the video on his YouTube channel. So if you have first-hand experience chatting with Sir Julius Chan, if you understand or know his leadership style or philosophy, then please do share so we can. It's all for the good of the next generation. We need to know leaders like Sir Michael, Sir Julius Chan, Mauri Kiki, and Sir Abia. So we discuss their life, we talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, and then future policy leaders like you students will draw from these experiences, draw from this knowledge in order to be better leaders to lead our country going forward. Based on our national interests, we have to pursue our national interests at all costs and chart a new development path for our country. So thank you, Mr. Ako, for continuing to help us learn about our foreign policy and many important influential figures. We call them giants, giants in our study of foreign policy. So Sir Julius Chan is a living giant. He's still alive, still living and breathing. And hopefully he gets to write another book, basically, or this time specifically on PNG's foreign policy, the 1982 experience, or 1979 to 1982. So future policymakers and leaders will draw from that knowledge before he passes on to hopefully. But that's all. Thank you, Mr. Ako, for your time once again. And we will meet again tomorrow from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock to talk about our next.
Public service.
Yeah, our next topic is on public service. Mr. Ako will share his experience on the public service and also enlighten our students. What is out there? What is some people say that the public service is a jungle, the Waigani jungle or Waigani swamp. All kinds of names attached to it. So we don't know. The students don't know. So they need to know what is in store for them before they depart from academia and start a new life in the public
Have now.
service for those who are
Yeah.
interested in becoming public servants. Yeah.
All
That's
right.
all, Mr. Ako.
See you
Thank
all
you for your
tomorrow.
time. All right.
Bye.
Bye for now.